Welcome, everyone. I'm Mike Roberts, founder and CEO of SpyFu and RivalFlow, and today I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Sidra, Condron, and Dan Silber. Sidra is in charge of our content, and Dan is in charge of our SEO, and together they combine to be our content team, or a big part of our content team. And one fun fact is that Sidra is RivalFlow user #1. Sidra got to use RivalFlow before it was a product, right? It would be on like proof of concept day. What happened was I did some stuff over the weekend, and then I was like, check this thing out. And then Sidra did. So Sidra, how has RivalFlow changed?
Oh gosh.
It was a console app.
Oh my gosh. So it changed. It was a major leap from that point to the first launch. And then from there, another massive leap. So we had giant Jurassic era level leaps from what it was. But Dan, I don't know if you knew this, so I will tell you just for your entertainment or just to bring you into loop. It was when we were just working with it, like Mike said, proof of concept, it was type in a URL. And then I think I had to come up with a competitor that I wanted to compare against. So I would go grab a competitor, just go to the SERP and find a competitor that I wanted to go up against, drop that in, and it was really a one-to-one comparison. And then it would give me something similar to what we know and love today. Not close, but similar. And that was the output of here's what's missing from your article. So that was incredibly cool. I think we were talking maybe on a Friday.
Hold on, wait. So I'll get to interrupt you because I think that Dan is sitting there thinking, yes, can I just have that as a technical SEO? Can I just put in, can I just choose the two URLs? Because we definitely get that from users that are like, yeah, I just like to be able to put in these two URLs. Like, oh yeah, that was like the original. Anyway, sorry.
And what's wild is, yes, you can. You can do exactly that. And so now something that is a very new and advanced feature that we rolled out in the latter part of this big leap, that is how RivalFlow was in its little tiny alpha infancy. So it's kind of funny that we were like, no, let's add some things to make it a lot easier. And it ended up that going full circle was something that customers wanted and loved.
Actually, funny enough, Sidra, we haven't implemented that yet. Like the thing that came out that is the unranked stuff, but we're going to do it. It's just.
Oh, no. Here's what I'm talking about is I have an existing article on SpyFu that I would drop in. And then I have a competitor that I know I want to go up against. I control the page I want to improve. I control the competitor. Those both exist today. So that definitely is something that we can do now. And it's something that was my very first experience with RivalFlow, was approaching it that way.
Oh, you're exactly right. What we did is with the new unranked, it's called unranked content, but it's like underrated, right? Like it basically is just content that you have that doesn't show up in any of our billion searches. You know, we look in the top 100 on like a billion searches globally, and your page doesn't show up anywhere. So we call it unranked. You'll probably disagree with me because you'll type in some query that you think it makes it rank, and that's fine. It's indexed, but it doesn't rank on anything important. And sorry, it's really important probably, but not to us. So we don't see it, and so we have made that actually easier, right? So you can actually type in whatever page you want. Hypothetically, we were testing it out on like a Google Doc yesterday, and then it'll figure out which keywords you ought to be ranking on, and then you can choose from that SERP, and so that's the thing you're referring to.
Actually, no, that's so brand new. I wasn't even going to spill the beans on that.
It's like yesterday new.
Yeah, I was not spilling the beans on that. No, I was just simply talking about the fact that we added pick a page.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of flexibility now. Yeah,
we sure do. But the whole point of me telling that story was to bring Dan in on when we were first playing with this. I think it was a call of me, Mike, and Tree, and Mike was explaining it to us, and he dropped the link to this little tiny baby RivalFlow that was not yet RivalFlow, and we started playing with it. I just pulled up a SpyFu blog post, dropped it in, like, oh, this is pretty cool. Oh, wow, it's giving me actual text to add to this article. And by the way, I had no help with anything like that. So having this magical text just appear and I review it, say, well, it's pretty good. This actually fits nicely. And yes, we were missing this from the article. I'm going to go ahead and add it in just for fun. And I was doing this while we were on the call, where I'm looking this way and I'm half paying attention, adding it in. So I published that. And then when we came back days later, I checked Search Console and we had a spike. It was mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing, because we had a spike. And like, oh my God, I'm going to do this a lot more. So I started to do it to a few more articles, and we had no idea if it was just going to spike and drop and we would never see anything else again. But days later, we checked and it held. And it was holding across the board. So that was that initial excitement to me when I think about being that customer number one or even customer zero. That was what I remember, was how basic it was before anything that we added to it to even get it to launch. And it made a difference, and it made a difference that actually held.
Yeah, that's what kind of like made it like, oh, okay, we got to do this, right? Really, I think we do a lot of things and try a lot of stuff, and I honestly think that realistically, you should be folding 90% of your hands or more if you're kind of like vetting ideas. But this one, man, works real well.
That it does.
So what's it like to use it now, right? Like, so in that day, you kind of like would look at the stuff, and I know that you were very hands-on with editing it. And I know that there's a bit of a process to kind of like, well, I'll say this, in the beginning, I would not recommend that I wouldn't recommend to people. People would ask me, hey, should we just use this AI generated content and plug it in? And I was like, I would not. I don't recommend doing that. I would definitely edit it. It's sort of a suggestion, like an idea. This is how AI would answer it, hypothetically.
Yeah.
But now we've moved quite a bit towards, like we're at a point where we're like, just put this in. It's good. It's solid content. How does that workflow change for you? I'll bet that you still make some modifications.
I do. I edit pretty much everything just to put my spin on it, because sometimes I'll see something that's a very well-written phrase, and I think I like that, but I don't know that I would say it that way. And so backing off and looking at the entire article, if I wrote the original article and it has a style to it, and then it just makes an abrupt change to something that I would not necessarily say, I want to make that edit. So that's something I'll do. It's just, I feel that I can trust RivalFlow today with a lot fewer edits, or that it's a much smoother process, and it's taking a lot of steps off of my plate. So a big one that I loved was when we showed you, here's where to put content. Can I jump ahead to this? Because I love this.
Yeah.
So when even we got RivalFlow to a point where it was packaged and ready to launch, and we polished it, got it to a product that we really loved and we were using ourselves. And I liked that a lot, but I found that I would jump into the part where it, what was it? Here's something that you don't answer. So that's brand new content. I don't have it in the article. I could find a spot for it and just slide that right in, make some transitions, polish it up, and it would work really nicely. The parts where it said, here's something you answer partially, but you need to do a better job of it because your competitor answers it better, that was tougher. Because it's exciting to say, all right, I feel a little valid that I answered it already, I didn't overlook it, but I need to now expand upon it. And expanding upon that, it didn't always seem obvious where I could drop in that expansion. And so with this new update, Show Me Where It Goes, and it highlights, here's what you've already written. Just cover that up with the new content that we include what you wrote. Don't worry, you're not losing anything. We include it and we blended it into the new answer. That's probably my favorite feature.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. That was a tough one to solve. And I'm like, I'm glad that it makes me happy to know, that it solved a problem that you have, because, this is like the type of thing that I spend my day doing, and I don't actually do the work, right? But you do. And so I'm like, you're like my proxy for understanding, the suffering that we go through, or that people go through,
For sure. It was a productivity issue.
Yeah. And for the unanswered questions you hit upon too, how it shows you where those go. Imagine you're looking at a piece you wrote 2 years ago. I don't remember what I wrote. I don't remember what was in there. So imagine there's 18 questions you didn't answer. And for each one, you have to go reread the article, figure out where it might go logically, instead of just throwing them all at the end. Taking that step out of it saves you a bunch of time too, to know, here's the outline of the article. Here's where we think it should go. You don't have to think. You can just go get things done and move on to the next question. That's
a great point, Dan, because look, that's how spoiled I am today. I forgot about some of the pain before, but there were times it was slowing me down because I had to go reread the article and familiarize myself with it. So where was I going with the pacing here? So, when you're writing something, you're pacing it through, you're telling a story. You don't want to just cram something that belongs maybe 3/4 of the way. You don't want to cram that in at the front because you haven't established the other qualities to tell that story yet. And so I'm like, well, here we go. I've got to reread this. and not get excited to just jump it in because it fits here, you really would find yourself taking so much more time. So when I mentioned it was a productivity issue, I would fly through all of those additions and get to the part where I had to take a little more time to review it and do a gut check and feel like, am I really doing service to the story I'm trying to tell here? All of that added up. And so I found myself, I would make quick updates and I would publish and then I would set it aside and I would never finish my projects. So it got to be really frustrating. I wanted to hit that point where I finished something and I felt like I was putting something so much better and good out into the world before moving on. And instead I had things piling up. So helping me get to a point where I was far more productive and I was getting through these updates so that my piece was so much more helpful. That overall has just been a quality of life improvement.
Nice. I think I obviously don't do this, right? Like, I like to think that laziness is one of my highest virtues, but it is a fact. I am a lazy person, which causes me to like want to solve problems at scale, and it's a virtue vice kind of thing, you know. I wouldn't really want to do anything that's like repetitive or copy and pasting, and that's like where like sort of like the initial, if you look back on my career with scraping data, it's because I didn't really want to do any actual manual labor. But I feel like what I might do, the way that I might use RivalFlow would be to actually just do the questions that you answered. I'm sorry, the unanswered questions. I might just be like, and for me, because to me, I'm usually looking at some content that I didn't write, right? I'm like looking at, frankly, I go through customers' writing projects like every day. It's like my habit. I go through and make sure that people are getting a good experience. And so I look at those things and I'm like, well, what is it saying about where to place this? And man, that placement thing is such a time saver. It would be a massive time saver for me because I'm like, okay, this question isn't answered. It's kind of validating that for you by showing you the outline. And then it's like, here's exactly where to put it. And I'm like, yeah, I could actually see myself just doing this. Boom, 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 just placing those. The other ones, I feel like I might mess something up somehow. I feel like I might have to know more. But those ones, the unanswered questions, I'd just be like, and just follow with instructions because it's pretty good. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, you're right. There definitely is that sense of I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to lose what I already have. And early RivalFlow, before we solved that, I was holding on like, this is my precious content. Don't you dare change it. Because there would be recommendations of just take this and drop it in. And I'm looking at, well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't just automatically flow. I have to do a lot of editing for this to blend nicely. So now with the new improvement, with the new show me where it goes, the fact that it blends what I already have, I feel like it respects the writer. It respects the original content to say, keep what you have. We're just building onto it. Yeah.
Do you use the thing where it when you click on the link, it shows it to you on the page, or do you guys just use the one where it shows you kind of like the outline on the side?
I'm team outline for sure.
Right on.
Yeah, I've been using the outline as well, especially for the net new. So I haven't had it drop me into the article yet.
I agree, and it's surprising because you'd think that just being able to like put the link directly into the article where it highlights it is like, I mean, it's flashy and cool, but like basically just, I don't know. I thought that I'm a little bit surprised because it's my behavior as well.
Yeah. So when I really think about it, I don't want to go read it on the page. I'm usually in my editor ready to drop the content in. So if I know where in the outline it is, I'm just looking for the headline and going into the code. I don't necessarily need to see where it is on the page all the time. So in my workflow, usually I have RivalFlow up, editor up, and I'm just transferring one way into the article and hitting publish.
So we're kind of like
it's backup. I'll just add to it. For me, it's backup. So I do the outline first. And then if there's any question of how much exactly, am I throwing something into the middle of what's already there? Am I coming in with an entirely different section afterwards that might be a whole new H2? So sometimes I will do a little backup by glancing at the highlight of the article. So it takes the existing article and shows you like a live view, but highlights, here's what we are suggesting that you find and replace. So that's a bit of a backup just to make sure that I'm understanding exactly what's expected there. But I know Dan and I have talked about this. Sometimes it is a brand new H2, and then you need to make sure that it's following the consistent pattern of what you already have in the article. I'm adding an H2, my H3s fall in line very well. What's super cool is I love the fact that I've had a good success rate with that lately. So kudos to the dev team for making sure that the formatting is carrying over, because as I'm pasting in, there are very few times I've had to make any adjustments. It falls right in line. It's either here's a brand new H2 and all the H3s that go with it, or this is simply an H3 that's landing under an existing H2 that you have. So that's been a nice change too.
That's a little bit of a PSA. Let's call that one out kind of as a separate little section here. So in the beginning, like when we would generate this content, one of the first things that we ran into was, names and addresses and phone numbers and brands would like wind up in the content because we're referencing your competitor's content as a source of truth. So basically, the idea is that LLMs will ChatGPT or whatever will hallucinate, and so the way that we keep it from hallucinating is that we give it a source of truth. And the source of truth we use is their page. Well, the downside to that, or the flip side to that, is that when it's talking about stuff, it might be talking about their products or their brand, and and so we don't want you to paste that into your content. That would be bad. So we started to highlight those issues, and we've done a pretty good job of that, right? But one of the so we're talking about broadly, the 650 and counting improvements that we've made since launch. Many of those, probably 100 of those, go down that sort of like, oh, let's identify these sort of entities and what have you, and these sort of mistakes that can happen that are kind of like, not really hallucinations, more like, just what happens when you're using, if you're kind of literal with how you're comparing content. But we kind of got to this point where we're doing all of that really well and then formatting the stuff really well. But then the subtle thing was, we're accidentally replacing your H2 with an H3. And that can have pretty big and important implications. We try to not do it, but this is kind of like the thing that you now maybe need to keep your eye on. Can you talk about that a bit, Dan? Dan's the technical SEO side. So talk to us about what can happen here and what you saw and what we fixed.
Yeah, so basically you have what I call your content architecture. When you strip it all down to that outline view, what is your heading 1? What is your heading 2? What is your heading 3? And it should follow like a logical format of H1, then H2. If there's subsections, H3. If there's subsections of those, H4. Then it should bounce back to H3, H2, so on. What was happening for a little while there is almost every output was coming out as an H3, and it was telling us in the outline to put in a specific place in the article. If you just drop that in, the understanding was this is a subtopic of the H2 that was right below it. But in a lot of cases, this was an entirely new subject that should have been an H2, starting a new thought or a new piece related to the entire article. And so it was kind of starting to mess up the hierarchy of the content you were seeing there. And that was very important because it just kind of throws off a little bit what you're telling search engines when visually when people are reading the article. Is this still a subtopic of what I was just reading, or is this an entirely new thought? So that was a very, very minor but important piece as an SEO for me to identify.
It's subtle but super important. I'll tell you this: we have recently, like in the last couple months, we've made it so that you can connect RivalFlow to your Google Search Console account. And so what happens is that when you complete a project, we mark that date, and then we do a before and after, so we can see, here's what happened on this page before, and here's what happened after, and did you go up, right? And so the beautiful, glorious truth is that that everybody's stuff goes up in general, right? Like you actually do see these sort of lifts. We see two kind of charts. We see things that look like this, and we see things that look pretty much like a line, right? Like nothing actually changed. But we don't see things that drop almost ever. And when we do, it's like a 5-alarm fire, right? For me, I go through all these things and I look for them on a constant basis, trying to figure out if there's any way that we're ever doing any harm, right? Because the RivalFlow sort of first directive is do no harm, right? Like if we can make an SEO process that only makes things go up and make it easy and almost automated, then we basically won the world, right? So anytime I see something go down, I go in and look at it. Oftentimes it's like a 301, right? So like basically it's not showing up in Google Search Console. That's like probably of the 70 or something things that I've ever seen go down, like 55 of that. Some are random, but the ones that I've seen a couple where I drill in to see exactly what their before and after content was, and we actually made a recommendation to change an H tag. Like basically we wouldn't recommend this, but the output in our markdown is an H3 where it was once an H2. And so when we replace their H2 with an H3 in our replace this content, that causes some down, some things to go down. So fundamentally, we got like 99% of things are either flat or up, 1% of things are down, and like 10% of the things that are down or whatever are you know, some portion of that is that. And so obviously that's the thing that we fix. But frankly, it's a subtle thing, but it does matter. It's the one thing that can actually make an impact. Obviously it's a bug we fixed, frankly. Like as soon as I found it, we fixed that bug. But that's a subtle art. It's something that we could continue to, you know, we'll continue to, anytime we see it, we'll improve, we'll fix it. But like that kind of technical stuff could happen. And if you
But that's a good catch. You know, you said that it was a bug. For me, my experience has been that it's been spot on. But that's a really great catch, because as much as we've tried to see RivalFlow from the perspective of, like, let's say an agency who's working on behalf of clients and they have the sophistication or even the resources to catch that, we also want to be able to just as much serve someone who is just getting by and they're just trying to manage their own content, their own website, and they don't have a team to do it for them, or that's not even their primary job, right? It's one dermatologist or one, you know, one attorney at a small firm saying, all right, this is something that we have to do. It's just part of business. And so when we can look out for them that way to be able to catch that, I think that was a really good improvement.
I mean, yeah, honestly, in a weird way, you kind of got, like, when you buy RivalFlow, you're actually kind of buying this weird service layer. If you connect it to GSC, I'm personally monitoring your results. Like, we actually, you know, if something breaks, we figure out why, because it's like, because nothing really should ever, nothing bad should actually happen with the recommendations that we're giving. And it's kind of built that way, right? It's built to be, you know, bulletproof and easy, and just like, you know, it shouldn't require much technical. It doesn't require much technical stuff, right? So we're really trying to make sure that that's not something you have to worry about. And frankly, you almost don't have to at all. But if there's something to worry about, you know, that's the only thing. Nothing else is gonna have a negative impact on you. Right. So along this line of the, you know, sort of 650 things that we have improved since launch. Some of those things are kind of subtle. Some of those things are like just about how the thing feels. And I've talked in various, like, sort of, you know, in various videos or webinars or whatever about where we get the ideas, right? And a lot of times it comes from stuff that we were already planning on doing. Other times it comes directly from the customer, directly from customer conversations. But one in particular, I remember hearing from you, Dan, and that was that, like, in the beginning, when we first launched RivalFlow, it would make recommendations based on the biggest possible, like, somebody's outranking you by like 80 positions.
Yes.
They're just destroying you. You're getting ruined, right? And so you'd see a lot of things like the stuff at the top of the action stream. Our top recommendation might be like, you're in position 86 and they're in position 28. They're just absolutely destroying you. But you're like, first of all, I don't really want to be in position 28, and I probably can't get there from 86. Yeah. You know, so you're like, hey, well, we should just kind of optimize this for like things that are just off the first page, you know. And I was like, oh yeah, obviously that makes a lot of sense. And so we wound up, funny enough, like the optimal position winds up being like 13, right? 13 is like the perfect position. You're almost there, you know. That's like the optimal spot. So we wind up, I mean, I don't know if you guys care about how the math works, but how has that felt to you, like when you use the product? I wanted to highlight the fact that some of our ideas come from our internal team working on it, but how's that improved? Like, have you noticed that improvement?
Yeah, and there's one. So if I'm going to take some time to improve an article, I want to have my ROI on that, and that doesn't necessarily mean revenue, but I want to show that we got traffic from it now. So if we're at 80, as you mentioned, being able to go to number 10 from updating the article just may not happen. And so you did all this work, you went from 80, great, you're now at 40, you're still not getting any traffic, any clicks, anything like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, if we're looking at a keyword that's ranking number 80, it may be wildly off from the topic of the article. There's just a greater chance of that, because if search engines haven't seen you as relevant for this, it's probably not. So one of the great side effects from it is the keyword recommendations themselves have gotten tightened up and been a lot more relevant for the articles when we look at them. but it also gives me a chance to say, hey, we are at number 13. We're getting a tiny bit of traffic, but if we can do enough to get closer or outrank the person at number 3 or number 5, we go from nothing to a whole lot of something. That's my reward for taking the time to optimize this content.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, like, so this sort of like not recommending position 86 ones to like basically what we probably recommend now on average is something where you're moving from position on average 13 to probably on average like 3, right? So that's like the sum or the average or whatever of our recommendations. You know, that's really not like that really overly simplifies the whole thing, but it's moved a bit and become more about opportunities to get onto the first page and that kind of thing, which is really what SEOs I think are more focused on. But Action Stream 2.0, right, is fundamentally different. We found that thanks Google, we have a lot of diversity on the SERP. Like you're talking about, if you're in position 86, it may not ever be the right intent, right? That page may not be, it's ranking, but it's not going to rank number 1 or number, you know, even on the first page of results. It might be like a, you know, I think we had one where it's like, we have like something where it's like Jasper versus Server SEO or whatever, and like one of the keywords that it ranks on is like Jasper review or something like that, you know? Realistically, the versus isn't going to get onto the first page there on that top keyword, but it would obviously get on something that's a versus. So with Action Stream 2.0, like the whole new algorithm where we're actually looking at the content and comparing the content to determine what the best you know, competitor is. That's like, I imagine fundamentally changed. I know it's fundamentally changed the quality, but I think that that's kind of been like, you know, I feel like I've heard this from.
Yeah, no, I have too, because the you know, as an SEO, one of the first things I'll do is just like, all right, I'll just pick the keyword. Don't worry about it. I know this is a page. It's probably an opportunity. I'll go change it out. Then I got to change the competitor sometime, all those things. Much less of that, which scales my time and my efficiency when I'm working on everything else. So yeah, I've definitely noticed that improvement there too.
So the way that I would use RivalFlow, right, is I would go in to pick a page because I know what I feel like I know what I'm doing. Whether or not I know what I'm doing, or whether I just feel like I know what I'm doing is irrelevant, right? I think I know what I'm doing. Going there, I'm gonna like choose the page that I want to rank on. I click on, you know, generate or give me a recommendation, and then I look at the recommendation. I'm like, okay, well, where did this come from? And then I start looking at the SERP, and it used to be the fact that if I started to look at the SERP, because we show you the SERP on the side, so you can like see what, you know, options there were. I could almost always, 95% of the time, find a slightly better competitor with the old model. And now I can't. I mean, basically, I go in and I'm like, yeah, that's solid. This is a really good recommendation. I won't gain anything by trying to improve it. That's what I found. I don't know that I actually have a counterexample to it, having looked at 100 or something of those since. Have you tried to beat the tool?
No,
it's been pretty
definitely
solid.
not.
So
No, definitely not. In fact, even the example that you two were just talking about, I have noticed I spend less time shopping for the next project that I'm going to be working on. And that's what it feels like, right? You open up RivalFlow, like, all right, what am I going to do today? I do still look at the recommendations, maybe to make sure that I'm not overlooking something. I'm giving it a little more trust that it has done some legwork for me. It has looked at maybe some changes in ranking that I had just missed, or maybe some keywords that I was not necessarily thinking about. So for me, that's where I feel like the recommendations can have my back. So I peek at those. I think I'm a little different from you two. I probably use the recommendations more than pick a page. But as I mentioned at the start of us talking, pick a page is so cool because that is the way that I started using RivalFlow the first time.
I'm beginning to think that maybe, you know, we'll probably test this out in the near future. I have a feeling that a lot of people come in to RivalFlow first run experience, right? The first run experience is when you first onboard or whatever, with an intent, right? With an idea of what they want to do. But as you kind of like use it week to week, month to month, you know, that's when those sort of recommendations probably become a lot more useful. But we may wind up leading more. We'll certainly test leading with an option to just like, you know, hey, maybe you should just come in and start with pick a page because you might already know what you want to work on, and then those recommendations will come in. But given that you use it all the time, it kind of makes sense that like, I mean, yeah, I know what I want, but like that's not really the point. You want to come in and have it give you some suggestions, like, so you don't have to like do all the research yourself. Hopefully it does a pretty good job of doing that. Well, hey, look, let's talk real quick about what's coming next. I know that you guys spend a good amount of time thinking about, well, actually, let's talk about what's coming next real quick. Okay, so like by the time this video goes, right, we'll definitely have, secret guys, the unranked content thing is in fact out. It's at the bottom of Pick a Page. Don't tell anyone I told you. But you can try it out. It has a little beta tag on it, and it's actually pretty slick. And if you want to like a really crazy hack that you guys may not even know about, you can put in for who knows how long, you can put in any URL into that. Like it doesn't even have to be from that domain. So yeah.
That's nice.
I was trying it out with like a Google Doc to see what would happen, and it actually airs out. But we'll probably figure out why it aired out, and but you can put in anything. It's kind of cool. Like fast follow to this. And so by the time this video goes, it might actually already be out, but you'll be able to choose any keyword, whether or not you already rank on it or not, anywhere on the site. Like, so in sort of like the action stream recommendations, in Pick a Page, if you as kind of like, you know, the expert know what that content, what you're targeting for that content, as opposed to like what you actually rank on, I'm going to tell you that if you want the guaranteed results, the guaranteed lift that RivalFlow gives, I recommend riding the wave that Google's giving you rather than trying to like swim against the current, right? So just amplify those vectors, right? And if those vectors are keywords that align reasonably close with your content, I don't recommend changing from that. Like that's not my recommendation, but you're the expert, right? You're in charge of your own destiny. Do what you want to do, right? If you want to try and rank on something else, go for it. And there's a lot of cases for that, right? There's a lot of cases where you're ranked, you have like 5 keywords that you rank on and they all suck. You know, and the whole intent of the page is completely different than what you actually rank on. So in that case, you want to edit it and you want to track against that, and you want to like level your content to whatever's there. So that's coming real soon. It's like InDesign. It'll probably go through and potentially go out like early next week. But the thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the stuff that's coming beyond that, which is the humanization of the outputs, right? And I know Sidra, I know that you wrote about that quite a bit. And I know Dan that you do a lot about that. What do I mean? What am I talking about here? What is humanizing content?
Dan, do you want to run with that, or shall I?
Oh, you've got that one.
So a little bit of background. If you've done any, let's say, collaboration with AI to help you write content, whether it's just dropping things into ChatGPT or actually using a tool, you will start to see patterns that AI has tells. And some of these tells are incredibly subtle. It's something that you wouldn't notice until you start doing this article after article, one after another. And you're like, did I read this already? Or funny, I keep seeing the same phrasing every time I get a piece from AI. Something that we laugh about is in a world of digital landscaping, or, you know, in the SEO landscape. It makes me think of that movie trailer voice. It's so dramatic, but it's really trite. It's so cliche. And we just grab it and delete. So that's on one end of the scale. The far other end is, as you mentioned, AI can hallucinate. So with all of those things, from little quirks that AI writing style has, maybe it loves bullets so much that it will bulletize everything, including things that should be longer paragraphs. So you will start to see like this basket of what I call tells, or just qualities that come from AI. And not only are they annoying to see as a reader, like the reader doesn't want to deal with any of that. It doesn't do anything for your content. It holds you back. And what you really are supposed to be doing is setting yourself apart. You're supposed to have a point of view or an opinion, or bring something to the table that hadn't been out there before. Otherwise, why are you putting anything out? Why are you writing? So humanizing the AI content is to get rid of all of that stylization that makes it a little more obvious to a discerning eye that it was written by AI, and polishing that down. You're getting rid of hallucination, but also you are adding your own perspective, making sure that you're not relying on the crutch of AI. You're just using it as a little boost so that you ultimately put something out that is coming from you.
I think that is kind of like a fundamental truth to RivalFlow, right? Like I think that it's really important to have like the core of like the content be something that that has your soul, right? And then we just sort of like round it out. We add in that stuff that is your blind spot, or like your curse of knowledge or whatever, just to kind of like make your content more well, frankly, it answers users' questions, right? More useful and helpful to them. but it doesn't, you know, like you don't have to like write all of the things to get your core idea out there, right? Yeah, that's a good point. I wanted to, oh yeah, firstly, secondly, thirdly, those are like the quintessential GPT 3.5 ones. I think it's interesting that we're deeply embedded in this space, right? Like this is like we have a like AI detector that's
Yes.
like probably heightened, but I think it's interesting that we can almost like get like we're getting better at it. Like, you know, like you learn it and then you sort of like learn the texture of it, and it's such a short time frame, right? Like it's like you could detect something that was like VHS, right? I guess I'm dating myself technically, but it doesn't seem like it. But you can detect things of certain qualities, and we used to have like years to like adapt to it or to figure that out. Now we've got like the thing that we're learning to detect over like a 6 months, right? It's pretty interesting how that is. But yeah, so coming soon in the next few months will be a whole host of humanization tools. Obviously the content will be, we want to kind of like let you put your own touches on the output without having to spend a lot of time like you would, you know, like I think we get a lot of like our biggest competitor in all of what we do might be ChatGPT or something, right? Like you could just do all this yourself. I mean, you could, but it takes a lot of wisdom and a lot of like thinking and a lot of like copying and pasting, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass if you wanted to do it that way. It's not really, you can't really do it at scale, and you have to spend a lot of time doing things. So we kind of want to make this humanization thing not something where you have to take it out and like massage it. We just want to make it so that it'll just kind of you can give it simple commands or buttons or whatever without having to do a whole lot. So that is coming soon. So any final thoughts on that stuff? Anything you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I like the idea of it speeding up the process. Anything to speed up your process so that you have time left over, not to go pop bonbons, but to add yourself to the content, because that ultimately is what we should be doing. So if AI frees up me, if it writes an outline for me, then it frees me up that it has given me a head start, and then I can continue to pour myself into the writing. Mm-hmm. If RivalFlow's AI gives me additional content for areas that I had overlooked, that helps me make a more helpful, more thorough piece, and then I can add myself in to polish that up. So for me, I think it's so important to still be in the driver's seat, no matter what you're putting out. And I love hearing that RivalFlow is allowing the user to still be really front and center in what's coming out.
Yeah, we want to kind of balance between being super easy to use, but also like really powerful, right? Like putting things into a product is actually so much easier than keeping it clean. And so we started RivalFlow with like this just super simple, very straightforward path. And now we're kind of adding in little bits here and there, but still trying to keep it true to its kind of like, to its ease of use, to its streamlined, to sort of like the, so you can stay in your flow and not be overwhelmed with a whole bunch of data, here's all the keywords and here's how many times the keywords are mentioned. It's like, Jesus, let's just like focus on the content and, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And for me, jumping back to the unranked content, it's not necessarily about that your content is bad. It could be that it's a new piece and, this takes time to get in the index. It takes time to start getting ranking. You may have produced a piece or someone on your team produced a piece and it's been published for a month. You're not seeing the traction you want. Maybe it's way more competitive than you expected. Currently, if it's not finding the keyword, RivalFlow can't do anything about that. But now if we can take these unranked pieces and say, all right, I've given it 3 weeks, I've given it a month. I just want to show search engines I'm going to keep making this better, and being able to just pop it into RivalFlow, pick the keyword I know I was trying to target and get more suggestions based off the competition. Is huge. So it's not necessarily that your content's bad. It could be new and we just haven't found those suggestions through our algorithms yet. And so you can kind of just force it to do what you want to do and not have to wait. Yeah,
totally. And the interesting thing that we do with that, trying to keep the first suggestion really straightforward, right? Trying to like dial in that unranked content. So like, that's my assumption. It's either new or oftentimes been around for a while. And so it's really like high opportunity in the sense that I've got nothing to lose. With some of that content, you got nothing to lose, right? So So I'm thinking to myself, well, what would I want to do with it? I'm thinking, well, let's just make it so that you rank on something, anything almost, right? So we just sort of target like a keyword that gets about 1,000 searches per month. That's kind of our the default thing is going to, analyze the content, figure out what it's about, and then choose a relatively longish but not super long tail keyword.
Yeah.
But of course, you'll be able to override it and choose the exact keyword that you want. But that's how we sort of we look through it and we try to find 20 of them, and then we choose the one that matches the best, that matches the content the best, and so that's how it works.
Yeah, that's really exciting because you can write something, you can create a piece of content, put it out, knowing very well what your intention was, and do your research, and still have those spots that you overlooked. So Dan would go back and look at old SpyFu articles for me and flag them and say, this has so much piled in that is not core to what the article should be about. So if you look on the SERP, everyone else who's ranking above you, they're treating it more like a guide, or they've covered these details, but they left this alone. They focused here. And that was so incredibly valuable to me that it's as though RivalFlow can do something similar. To say, look, here's everything that's missing that you're not putting into this article. And so it's a big eye opener, and it's a little comforting to know that there is like an unbiased point of view to say, I've looked at everything else, and here's what you don't have. And that doesn't have to be done out in public. You don't have to get embarrassed that you missed everything. You say, okay, cool, thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to add it to the article and then set this little baby free, and hopefully it will spread its wings and fly free.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know this, but like for this unranked content thing, I knew that we were going to solve it, but like the person that I'm solving it for is actually my sister. She's a mortgage broker, has a website, and they rank on some things, but they largely rank on like people's names, like the staff names. They've got a whole bunch of blog content, and I think that none of it really ranks, And so I'm like, well, this is just great. Like I really want to solve this particular problem. What I like about the unranked thing is that it'll actually figure out where the company is and make sure that it's using those. If it's a local business, it'll use those sort of locally targeted keywords, which I'm like, this is what my customers want, and obviously also works for her site and all that stuff. So it's now we haven't tried it out because it's been out for a couple of days, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work out really well. It's such great recommendations, and obviously the writing projects are fantastic, of course. We just got to get that rolling, so pretty stoked. Well, hey, thanks guys for coming. It's been a fantastic and wonderful conversation, and I look forward to doing more of these. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.